Welcome back to the Deep Dive. 30 days, can you believe it? Our exploration of psychedelics has flown by.
Yeah, it really has. It does kind of feel like a trip through time, doesn't it, when you think about it?
I know, right?
Yeah.
And on that note, today we're shifting gears a little. Instead of adding more information to the pile, we're going to try to connect the dots, bring it all together.
Yeah, synthesize.
Exactly. We've gone through stacks of articles, tons of research, even personal anecdotes. How do we even begin to make sense of it all? Especially if we're looking ahead, thinking about the future of psychedelic therapies and all that.
Right, right. Well, I think one thing that's been a constant throughout all this is receptor pharmacology.
Okay, so receptor pharmacology. It sounds kind of sci-fi, but I have a feeling it's more down to earth than it sounds, right?
Yeah.
Like, how does that help us make sense of everything we've talked about?
Well, you remember those receptors we kept talking about? Those tiny little locks on brain cells?
Yeah, I remember.
Well, receptor pharmacology is all about understanding how these different psychedelics, they act like keys, they fit into those locks, and then bam, they trigger certain effects.
Right. Like how LSD and psilocybin seem to really like that 5-HT2A receptor.
Exactly.
Why is that one so important? We've talked about it a bunch, but remind me again.
That's the cool part. The 5-HT2A receptor, it's like the VIP backstage pass to all those classic psychedelic effects. You know, the visuals, the altered thinking, even those mystical experiences.
Oh, wow.
It's like a doorway in the brain, and these substances are the keys that swing it wide open.
So it's not just random chaos happening at a molecular level.
Nope, not at all.
By understanding how each psychedelic interacts with this specific receptor, we can start to predict and even maybe control the experience.
You got it. It's like a roadmap for navigating the whole psychedelic landscape. Knowing which keys fit which locks, it helps us develop those super targeted therapies for specific conditions.
Okay, so it's about getting specific.
Yeah.
Makes sense. But we talked about more than just tripping, right? Like neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to change and adapt.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Does receptor pharmacology tie into that too?
Big time. It turns out that psychedelics, by activating certain receptors, can actually encourage that neuroplasticity,
Okay.
help the brain rewire itself.
So like a fresh start for the brain,
Mm.
a chance to kind of break free from those old patterns that might be holding us back.
That's the idea. We're not just throwing these substances at problems and hoping for the best.
Right.
We're understanding the mechanisms, targeting specific receptors and pathways, moving from a sledgehammer approach to a scalpel, you could say.
Okay, that's a powerful image. But, thinking back to everything we've discussed, it feels like receptor pharmacology is just one piece of the puzzle. We also talked about set and setting, remember? Mindset, environment. That can have a huge impact on a psychedelic experience.
Oh, absolutely. It's the whole context, right?
Right.
Remember that study we discussed?
Right.
Supportive environment and positive intentions.
Yeah.
Way better outcomes.
Right. It's almost like even if you have the right key, the door might not open the same way for everyone.
That's a great way to put it. We can't forget the human element.
So how do we combine everything then? The receptor pharmacology, the set and setting. How does it all fit into creating safe and effective therapies?
Well, that's the million-dollar question. The big challenge and the huge opportunity, I think. By weaving receptor pharmacology into how we approach treatment, we can create therapies that are not only effective, but also personalized and safe.
Personalized. Okay, so you're talking about like psychedelic therapy that's tailored to each person's needs and their own unique receptor profile.
That's the vision. Imagine being able to look at someone's specific receptor variations and tailor the therapy to them.
Whoa.
Like
Wow.
precision medicine for the mind.
That's amazing. Instead of a one-size-fits-all approach, it's like a bespoke suit.
Exactly. And it's not just about getting the best positive effects. It's also about minimizing the risks.
Right.
Knowing how different receptor profiles could play out, we can maybe even anticipate and prevent some of the challenges.
Okay, I'm definitely on board with that. It feels like we're talking about a future where psychedelics can really, truly reach their full potential, help people in ways we can't even imagine right now.
And to get there, to really unlock that potential, we've got to keep exploring, keep digging into the mysteries of the brain and the psychedelic world.
Buckle up, everyone, because that's what we're about to do. We've only just scratched the surface, and there's so much more to uncover.
Let's dive back in. It's like as we go deeper down this rabbit hole, receptor pharmacology becomes more and more like having this master key to the psychedelic toolbox. You know what I mean? It's like it helps us choose the right tools for the job.
Okay, that's a good analogy.
Yeah.
So we're not just looking for any key that fits the lock.
Right.
We want the key that opens the door to the most beneficial outcome for each individual. Like, how does that work in practice?
So take MDMA, for instance. We've talked about how it seems to be really effective for treating PTSD.
Yeah.
But why? Well, its unique receptor profile. That might be the key.
Oh, right. MDMA affects a bunch of different neurotransmitter systems, right? Not just serotonin.
Exactly.
Is that why it can create that sense of safety and connection during therapy?
That's the thinking. It seems like MDMA actually dials down the activity in the amygdala.
Yeah, amygdala. Remind me.
That's the part of the brain that deals with fear and anxiety.
Oh, right.
And at the same time, it bumps up the levels of oxytocin, the love hormone, which increases feelings of trust and bonding and all that.
So it's like MDMA is creating a safe space, but inside the brain itself. It allows people to go back to those traumatic memories without being completely overwhelmed by fear.
Right, exactly. It's like having a warm, supportive environment right there in your head where you can actually process those painful experiences without triggering that whole fight or flight response.
But it's not about just shutting down emotions or anything, right?
No, not at all.
We also talked about how MDMA might actually boost neuroplasticity. So those changes in thinking and behavior, they could be more lasting, deeper,
Absolutely. It's like giving the brain a chance to rewrite its story, break free from those patterns that aren't serving the person anymore.
I've heard MDMA described as a heart-opening medicine. It's not just about changing your thoughts.
Right.
It's about feeling that deeper sense of connection and empathy with yourself and with other people.
Yes, and that's something that comes up again and again with different psychedelic experiences. Remember those studies we looked at? How psychedelics can increase those feelings of openness, compassion, connection to the world.
Yeah. It's like these substances are reminding us of something we already have inside us, the capacity for love, connection, wonder.
And it's not just anecdotal either. We're seeing those subjective reports reflected in brain imaging studies now. Increased activity in the areas associated with empathy, a decrease in the areas associated with self-referential thinking. It's pretty fascinating.
Speaking of fascinating, we also went down the microdosing rabbit hole, remember? Tiny little doses of psychedelics. People say it helps with creativity, focus. But how does that even work with such small amounts? Is there even enough to trigger those receptors?
That's a really good question. And honestly, it's something researchers are still trying to figure out.
Right.
One theory is that microdosing might be subtly tweaking receptor activity, maybe by making them more sensitive or by influencing the release of certain neurotransmitters like dopamine or serotonin.
So even though you're not having a full-blown trip,
Right.
those microdoses could be making these tiny adjustments to the way your brain is working.
That's the idea. It's like fine-tuning an instrument as opposed to playing a whole symphony,
I get that.
But the research on this is still pretty new.
Right.
We need a lot more studies, more rigorous studies to really understand how it all works and to figure out if those reported benefits are real or just placebo.
Makes sense. We talked about a lot of different psychedelics, LSD, psilocybin, DMT, even mescaline. Was there anything that jumped out at you about how those receptor interactions could play a role in therapy?
Oh, yeah, totally. What really struck me was how even small differences in those interactions can lead to pretty big differences in the overall experience. Like LSD and psilocybin, they both mainly target that 5-HT2A receptor, but the effects are definitely not the same.
Right. LSD, it's like way more intense and longer lasting.
Yeah.
And psilocybin, people say it's more gentle, more introspective.
Exactly.
Is that because they're activating the receptor in different ways, even though it's the same receptor?
That could be part of it. It's also possible that LSD interacts with a wider range of receptors, like dopamine receptors, and that contributes to its unique effects.
Okay, so LSD is playing a more complex melody, while psilocybin is sticking to a simpler tune.
I like that.
And then there's DMT, which is like super fast and super short, a rocket ship to another dimension, but the ride only lasts a few minutes.
Right.
I remember reading about how DMT might even stimulate neurogenesis, the growth of new brain cells. That's wild.
It really is. We need more research to confirm that, of course, but it's a super interesting area to explore. Imagine if we could use that to promote brain healing.
Wow. It's like psychedelics are showing us that the brain is way more dynamic and adaptable than we ever thought.
And that's a really empowering message. It means that healing and transformation are possible, even when things seem really stuck.
Speaking of healing and transformation, set and setting.
Oh, yeah. Can't forget about that.
It's not just about the molecules themselves, right? It's the context they're used in.
Think of it this way. Receptor pharmacology gives you the blueprint, the biological foundation.
Okay.
Set and a setting, those are the architects and the construction crew, shaping how that foundation becomes a structure.
So even with the right key, you might end up in a completely different room depending on where the door is and who's walking through it.
Exactly. And that's why it's so important to include all of this in the clinical framework.
Right. You can't just hand someone a pill and say good luck.
No, you need to create a space that's safe and supportive.
Yeah.
You need therapists who are trained to guide people through these really powerful experiences.
It makes me think about those indigenous cultures that have been using psychedelics in ceremonies for centuries.
Oh, yeah.
They get it. They understand the importance of set and setting.
They've been practicing this holistic approach for a long time. They recognize that the substance isn't the only factor. It's the intention, the environment, the community.
It's something we can learn from as we try to integrate psychedelics into modern therapy.
Totally. It's about bringing together ancient wisdom and modern science, the best of both worlds, to create those really transformative healing experiences.
We also talked about the ethics of all of this, right?
Yeah.
Especially with the history of psychedelics being demonized and illegal and all that.
Yeah.
Those are important conversations to have as we start thinking about wider clinical use.
We have to make sure things are done responsibly. Informed consent, access to well-trained therapists, making sure people can navigate these powerful experiences safely and ethically.
We talked about the potential for misuse, for harm, especially if they're not used in the right way or with the right guidance.
And that's why education is so important. Getting rid of the myths and the stigma, giving people accurate information about the risks and the benefits.
Empowering people to make informed choices.
Exactly. And creating a culture that supports responsible exploration and integration. And then there's the whole legal and regulatory landscape, which is...
Yeah, a bit of a mess.
It's a mess. It's constantly changing, too. It's different everywhere you go.
Right.
Some places are more progressive, decriminalizing things, even approving psychedelics for therapy. Others are still stuck in prohibition mode.
It's like a balancing act between science, public perception, and politics.
Totally. But as we keep learning about the potential of psychedelics, I'm hopeful that we'll see more policies that make sense. Policies that are compassionate and grounded in evidence.
It's about finding that balance, right? Protecting public health, but also allowing access to therapies that could really change people's lives.
And recognizing that people have the right to make their own choices about their bodies and their healing.
Thinking about everything we've talked about, it feels like we're at this turning point for psychedelics. After decades of prohibition, they're finally coming back into the light.
Yeah.
And we're starting to see what they're really capable of.
And it's not just about treating mental illness.
Right.
Psychedelics have the potential to do so much more. Expand our consciousness, deepen our understanding of ourselves and the world around us, maybe even spark social and cultural change.
That's a powerful thought. It reminds me of that Aldous Huxley quote, "The doors of perception can be cleansed."
And it seems like psychedelics might be one of the keys to those doors, helping us see the world in a new way, with fresh eyes.
It's been an amazing journey so far, exploring the world of psychedelics through receptor pharmacology, set and setting, the ethics, the legal stuff.
We've learned a lot, but there's still so much to learn. That's what makes this field so exciting. It's like this constant exploration.
The deep dive.
Exactly, into the mysteries of the mind and the infinite possibilities of human consciousness.
We've covered a lot of ground, but I have a feeling this conversation is just beginning.
Oh, for sure. The psychedelic renaissance is happening, and I can't wait to see where it takes us next.
But before we get ahead of ourselves, let's just take a moment to appreciate how far we've come. We've gone from fear and misunderstanding to scientific research, therapeutic exploration, even a sense of acceptance in society, which is huge.
It's pretty amazing to see that shift happening.
And it says a lot about the power of these substances to change individual lives, but also to change the way we see the world, our place in it,
Yeah, absolutely. One thing that's really stood out to me throughout all this is just how diverse the psychedelic landscape is. There are so many different substances out there, each with its own unique way of interacting with the brain.
Right. LSD with all those serotonin receptors, psilocybin and its focus on 5-HT2A, DMT like a lightning bolt, salvinorin A doing its own thing with the kappa opioid receptor.
It's like we're exploring this vast, uncharted wilderness, and each psychedelic is a different trail leading to a different view.
And each journey has its own insights, its own challenges.
Speaking of challenges, we can't forget about the risks. the ethical considerations. These are not substances to be taken lightly.
Right. We talked about the importance of screening, responsible dosing, having a safe environment, and trained guides to help people navigate those tricky experiences.
And we need more research to really understand the long-term effects, the good and the bad.
It's about approaching this whole thing with a sense of balance, excitement for the potential, but also caution.
And being open and honest.
Yeah.
Talking about the successes and the challenges. Creating a space where people can share their experiences and ask questions without being judged.
Right. No shame, no stigma, just learning and growing together.
And psychedelics aren't a magic bullet,
No.
They can be catalysts for healing, but the real work happens afterward, in the integration.
Integration, that's a word we keep hearing. What does it really mean when we're talking about psychedelics?
It's about making sense of those experiences. They can be really profound, sometimes difficult to process.
Yeah.
It's about weaving those insights into your life, applying what you've learned to make positive changes.
So it's not just about having a trip and then going back to life as usual.
No, it's about letting that experience change you, shift your perspective, help you create a life that feels more meaningful, more aligned with who you really are.
It's like finding these precious gems of wisdom during the psychedelic journey and then polishing them up so they can shine in our everyday lives.
That's beautiful. And just like a garden needs the right conditions to grow, we need support to integrate those insights. Therapy, community groups, even just having close friends or family who can listen and understand.
It's about creating that safe space where we can process everything, make sense of the changes, figure out how to live those lessons.
And it takes time. It's a journey.
It's a journey, not a destination.
Exactly. A journey of self-discovery that can keep going long after the initial psychedelic experience. Like planting a seed and then nurturing it, watching it grow.
I love that. So as we're wrapping up this deep dive, I'm feeling really grateful.
Me too.
Grateful for the chance to explore all of this, grateful for everything we've learned, and grateful for all the people who are working to make this a better future for psychedelics.
It's been amazing to be on this journey with you, to see the power of these substances firsthand.
And it's just the beginning, right? The psychedelic renaissance is just getting started. I can't wait to see what happens next.
I know. There's so much more to discover, so much more to heal.
We've covered a lot in these 30 days, but we've only scratched the surface.
Right.
The exploration of consciousness, that's a lifelong thing. And psychedelics can help us along the way.
There are keys to hidden doors, compasses to guide us through unknown territory, mirrors to show us our potential.
It's been an incredible journey. I can't wait to see what other adventures are out there.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep asking questions, keep an open mind.
And keep diving deep. It does feel like we're just getting started. Like we've opened this door and there's this whole new world and we're just peeking inside,
That's a great way to put it. And what's even more exciting is we're not just watching it happen.
Right.
We can actually be part of it, shape how this whole field develops.
I like that. So instead of just riding the wave, we can help steer the ship.
Yeah.
But how? Where do we even start?
Well, I think first we need to remember this isn't a solo mission.
Okay.
It's not just scientists and labs or therapists. It's all of us. Anyone who's curious about this, anyone who sees the potential of psychedelics.
So it's about building a community, a shared purpose,
Mm-hmm.
a vision for the future of all this.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Sharing what we know, learning from each other, pushing for policies that make sense, policies that prioritize safety, access, responsible use,
Right. Break down the old stories, the stigma. Create a space where people can learn and heal without being judged.
And remember, psychedelics aren't for everyone.
Yeah, that's so important.
Yeah.
It's about respecting individual choice,
Mm-hmm.
people's right to make their own decisions about their health.
Absolutely. And the psychedelic experience, it's not just a one-time thing. It's a process.
Yeah.
And integration is a big part of that.
Integration. We keep coming back to that word. What does that really look like when we're talking about psychedelics?
It's about taking those experiences, which can be really intense, really profound,
Yeah.
and making sense of them, figuring out how to weave those insights into your life, how to make real changes based on what you've learned.
So it's not about having a trip and then just going back to life as it was before.
No, it's about letting the experience change you, shift your perspective, help you live a life that feels more authentic, more meaningful.
It's like we're finding these little gems of wisdom during the psychedelic journey, and then we have to polish them up so they can shine in our everyday lives.
I love that. And just like a garden needs the right conditions to thrive, we need support to integrate those insights. Therapy, groups, even just friends and family who get it.
Creating that safe space to process everything.
Exactly. It's a journey. And it takes time. It's not going to happen overnight.
It's a journey, not a destination.
Right. Like planting a seed and taking care of it, watching it grow.
So as we wrap up this deep dive,
Mm-hmm.
I'm feeling this sense of gratitude
You do.
for being able to explore all of this, for all the wisdom and the connections, for all the people who are out there paving the way for the future of psychedelics.
It's been an honor to be a part of this with you, to see how powerful these substances can be.
And this is really just the beginning. The psychedelic renaissance is happening, and I can't wait to see what unfolds.
Me neither. So much more to discover, so much to heal.
We've learned so much in these 30 days, but it really is just a glimpse. Exploring consciousness, that's something we can do our whole lives. And psychedelics can be a powerful tool.
Keys to unlock doors, compasses to guide us, mirrors to help us see our potential.
What an incredible journey. Excited to see where it goes from here.
Until next time, everyone, keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep an open mind.
Keep diving deep.